nice to be back in Munich and pretty close to my home, but I guess I'll take us right back to Silicon Valley and share a little bit about my experience and the Facebook hacker culture. You can really, this culture is really core to Facebook. You can really feel it and see it, and you can see it around the office. There are signs around the office that describe what the culture is really all about. And these were not put up by HR or a culture committee. A designer printed some posters one day, and they really resonated with people, and all of a sudden they were everywhere and in different offices around the company. What would you do if you weren't afraid? I think that's a good question to ask in general, but I think it's very important for startups and for growing companies to really question what you would do if you weren't afraid to make bold moves and people are encouraged to take risks every day. In 2008, the answer to this question, when Facebook was a successful college site all over the US and started to spread in English-speaking countries, the answer to this question was to expand internationally and really connect the world. But at the time, there was no international team, there were no international offices, and no marketing budget. So this next point, to move fast and break things, this is really the how of how to approach these interesting challenges. It refers to rethinking normal processes and established constraints or approaches. It's really to rethink how to go about a challenging question. It's not just about the how, it's also about focusing on what's most important. It's not about this, even though I also embrace this part of the culture. Moving around the office was very common, especially in the early days on these ripsticks, and I almost broke my hand doing that. But moving fast and breaking things, breaking existing approaches, is very common in almost everything we do at Facebook, from how we create new features, how we launch products, how we internationalize, and for me personally, how we thought about entering new and challenging markets. In Japan, for example, the concept of real identity online was almost unthinkable. Nobody put their real identity online. And so for us, we questioned, and people questioned whether we would ever be able to be successful with a product like Facebook that's about your real identity online. And we decided to give it a try anyways, and to prove that that real identity can have value, and have been growing pretty well in the last year, and people are starting to really embrace it, which has been exciting, and we'll see how it continues, but that has been a very interesting journey in Japan. In Russia, we still have a lot of work to do, but we are starting to see some signs that Facebook has made it and showed up in Moscow, some like buttons that were visible in the streets. But there are definitely a lot of challenges ahead in some of those most difficult markets. A last theme that I think is very important, that for me personally has maybe been the most challenging one to embrace as a somewhat perfectionist German, is this concept of done is better than perfect. One of my colleagues somewhere in an office on one of those posters ended up adding something, and he wrote right underneath, because something is better than nothing. And that was really when I thought that this actually does resonate with me. And our approach to how we internationalize and how we translate the site is, I think, one of the great examples for this, where we support over 70 languages in a product that constantly changes. And the way we can do that is with community-based translations, with users translating and voting on translations. And for many languages and smaller languages, it's not always perfect. We launch those languages before they're perfect or completely translated. But for the users in those markets, 90% translated so they can navigate the site and communicate with people they care about is a lot better than not having anything at all. So done is better than nothing. Another example for this is our hackathon culture. Every quarter, people spend a whole night working on something and getting something done that's not their day job, that they don't work on a daily basis. And there as well, prototyping something, getting something done, even if it's not perfect, is really important, and that's how a lot of core features, including the chat feature, got created and really started as part of those hackathon projects in one night. So this concept of hacking in our context is really about finding simple solutions or unconventional solutions to problems quickly. It doesn't apply only to how we build features and the site or how we internationalize. It even applies to a problem like space constraints in the office. And one team that just had enough of being squeezed into a small room, they just decided to change that situation. They had this conference room, and the next day, people showed up in the office, and it looked like this, and they built their own loft and expanded their space. So this culture and approach to do something that scares you and that might be impossible, to do that, to make that possible by breaking conventional concepts, by focusing on what's most important, and to either succeed or fail quickly and try again. And this concept and focus on getting something done, even if it's not perfect, that's really what I have enjoyed at Facebook and what I've embraced in Silicon Valley in general. And that's what allows the company to continue to move fast. And I think with that, I'll pass it on to Karen to share some of her experience.
Thank you, Angela. Is this working? Okay, all right. I don't have slides. I do have them for my Twitter workshop, aplenty. But for this, when Steffi asked me to talk, I said, well, what do you want me to talk about? And she said, you've been in Silicon Valley a long time. You know, you've had an interesting life. And honestly, that made me think about that fact, which I had not before. And so I did think about women in technology, and I'm a poster child for the traditional girl with the high marks in literature, history, and art, terrible marks in math and science. Never interested in those, could not get interested in those, didn't understand those. So I'm like the last one, I would have thought, would have ended up 25 years working in the technology field and in Silicon Valley. But that is the fact. That's what's happened. And I've been thinking a lot on my way here about some of the things that Angela was talking about. We talked last night, actually, about what are some of the sort of givens. And it's exactly, now I think people in technology and maybe people who follow it to some extent take as a given this idea of you know, break things fast, fail fast, make something, you know, good but not perfect. Just keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. These are principles, I think, in the technology world for many years, even though the pace used to be a lot slower. And I realize now I'm so grateful to have worked, even as a humanities major, in a world that was so fast moving. I've thought for many years, to me, you know, a slow death would be, and forgive me for those who may work in these fields, but it used to seem like an awful fate, you know, banking or insurance or government. They all seem to me to be such slow pace compared to the world I was then getting immersed in. And really maybe through technology, all of that has changed. And I think that for me, I've always been a writer and editor. I've always been a content producer, a content organizer. I love information design. So for me, whatever the technology has been, the idea of making things clear and useful online just became sort of my watchword. That's always been a passion of mine, and it just has grown as the internet came upon us and as we all had much more access to seeing content and, of course, creating content. And so I feel like every day I live in a miracle. You know, I worked before Twitter. I joined Twitter about 9 months ago. Before that, I was at Google for 9 years. And that was a fantastic experience. Google, there were many firsts at Google in terms of this kind of open, the velocity of this open culture, I should say. We all stand on the shoulders of giants. This is what engineers say. And that was true for me at Google in terms of getting used to this open culture that was a meritocracy. And I'm not here to say that there's no discrimination against women at any level or that women are perceived as equal in every single setting and encounter, because that's not the case yet. But there's much more of a chance that you're in a meritocracy, that you're viewed, that the presumption going in is you have something to offer, that you bring something of value. And if that happens enough, you begin to believe it yourself, even if you didn't earlier. And so I feel grateful for my years in tech, and by the way, it still carries over beautifully at Twitter, and now I have another addition. I have wonderful gray hair, and I have some authority I did not have in earlier years, where people don't question me as much. And I find that is also a great advantage. Whether or not I know what I'm talking about, I act as if I do, and that seems to work some wonders now and again. So, so there's more good to come for those of you who are not yet in the silver-haired set. But I think I just feel as if the world of technology, and especially as embodied in Silicon Valley, which has always been characterized by, you know, prospects are endless, possibility is everything, anything is possible, you know, stranger things have happened and stranger things are going to happen. That's in the air, that's in the water in this part of the country. It doesn't have to be the only place by any means, but I think it's where so many people want to come and have a touchstone at Stanford or in some technology company in the San Francisco area, you know, all of which have a long tradition of let's try it and let's question authority. These are sort of watchwords for what goes on in that area that I think have been so inspiring to so many people. And so for me, I think the watchwords that I've come away with after all my years of not having a grand plan, having no career design whatsoever, is simply, I know perseverance has mattered. I've always persevered no matter what else. I'm a Taurus, I'm stubborn, I just kind of keep going ahead. But in equal measure, having good humor. These are the two things that I think have to go hand in hand. If you have too much of one or the other, you're out of balance and it's not going to work right. So those two things I think have helped me, and certainly other women, but I think anyone who's, you know, wants to test the future, try the future, move fast and break things, fail fast and then succeed. Those are the two things I think that have become my watchwords. And I think I'll leave now a little time for Marguerite.
A question you brought up, what would you do if you weren't afraid? So I'm 23, Angela's 32, Karen is in the silver-haired set.
Yeah.
And I imagine that at each point we're encountering fear at all three life stages. So I wanted to ask each of you, what fear did you overcome to get to the position you're in right now?
I think for me, it was moving out there, going to San Francisco in the first place. I remember after finishing university here, I moved there, and just because I wanted to try something, and I thought that was an exciting place. But I remember I didn't speak English fluently at the time. I remember I was scared to make phone calls to important people and was really worried about not expressing things correctly and insulting people, and those kinds of things definitely happen, but over time that goes away. And now it's other things. It's challenging situations happen if you're out there working on moving into a country. There's no one else. You have to deal with whatever happens, with whoever shows up and whatever problems arise. And so the challenges are different, but I think they're always there. There's always something that kind of pushes you out of your comfort zone.
But you find yourself less, you know, you may have a new fear, but you know you've already conquered some other fears.
Yeah, I think over time you realize that somehow things always work out.
Exactly.
And it probably will again, even if you don't know how.
Yeah. Well, I think for me it was someone from a humanities background. I thought, really, computers? You know, the world of business. I've been in a nonprofit and academic setting before, and I came to work in the San Francisco office of a computer magazine publisher in 1985. The Macintosh had just been introduced, and I thought, there's a whole world here that's sprung up that I know nothing about. You know, they all have their own lingo. They seem to know what they're talking about. But, and that was frightening, but, you know, the publisher had hired me. He evidently saw something. I did, but the other thing was, I thought, well, the one thing I do know is I know how to write and edit. And that's part of what this job is. That's what the magazines do. So I have to rely on that, even if I don't know this other stuff. So that helped me get through it.
So you are a German in America. I'm an American in Germany. Is there anything, what do you bring to Silicon Valley as a German?
I don't know if it's specifically German, but I think it does make a difference being there and being in the international team and not being from that same country. And I've lived in a couple of countries around the world, a couple different continents, and I think you just think differently about international challenges, and our international team is from all over the world. I think that matters. You bring a different context and you've experienced things at different places.
I've heard it described as one of Germany's strengths is internationalization versus the US, it being one of the US's weaknesses as far as tech goes. Do you feel that's a true assessment?
Well, I think it's interesting. If you just look at the market here is much smaller, so all my friends who work on startups here and looking at just the German market it's decent, but it's not as big as the US, so they have to worry about the rest of Europe, different languages very quickly. And even just growing up here, you cross borders very quickly and you hear different languages, you deal with that even in your daily life very quickly. And I think that's just something that's more present. And for entrepreneurs in the US, I think they primarily focus on the product, they have a huge market, and then thinking about internationalization comes much, much later.
I will say, I think technology, that the advances of technology into consumer products and into our daily lives has had a flattening effect for people understanding and working more internationally. Certainly in tech companies, they're all like the United Nations. That's part of their appeal, that's part of the value that people bring. People from all over have skills to offer. And by, you know, applying them in technology, I mean, Twitter is as much a global diversity at its scale as Google is. And that's really remarkable to me. We take it for granted now. We're going to know people from all around the world.
Can you speak a little bit about the value in having headquarters in the Valley versus some of the emerging hubs here?
Well, I think that really depends. I think Silicon Valley is a hub that's just, people have crazy ideas and nobody nobody judges and criticizes, and you can walk around and talk about your idea, and everyone thinks it might be possible. I think that's something that's that's reinforcing it's a hub that has so much of reinforcing qualities, but I think some of those qualities and some of that you can find in different places around the world, and there's definitely a lot more entrepreneurial activity in Europe now than almost 10 years ago when I left. And just going to Berlin, going to London, Moscow, there's a lot of entrepreneurial activity.
And Karen, maybe can you talk a little bit about Twitter's arrival in Germany versus the headquarters in San Francisco?
Well, we did just open a small office in Germany, and we're concentrating on building out. I should say before I talk about the German office, Twitter is available now in 30 languages. 70% of Twitter usage is outside the US. That's been true actually for a while. So it's not that we have to internationalize Twitter, it's more about the business side and developing either regional offices that will address brands and sales opportunities in a region, in a country. So that's what the Berlin office is for.
And so you described to me earlier your arrival, for instance, in Russia and needing to acquire users away from Contacta. Why hasn't that been the case with Twitter, where you're entering new markets and you're competing with local versions?
Well, I'm not aware of, we do enter new markets, we do it all the time, we will continue to roll out, but I don't know of competitors to Twitter, honestly, in terms of a short form, real-time, SMS-friendly service. You tell me of another one.
There's one moped in Berlin that just launched 2 weeks ago.
Good luck to them.
But the lack of a need for internationalization, what does the international team at Twitter do?
No, there is need for internationalization on the business side. That is what they are equivalent to what Angela does. That's what they do. So it's not that there's a lack of need. What I'm saying is Twitter, the product, is available around the world today, as many of you may know, in many languages, and it's put to many uses around the world. We're talking about business internationalization.
Angela, do you mind quickly describing some of the challenges applying Facebook to new market spaces?
I think in general there's a need to communicate, and the product is available around the world and is used around the world. There are small local variations that we have in some places, like in Japan, for example, blood type is very important to people. It's something people care about, and we do have blood type on the profile in Japan. So there's some of those localizations, but for the most part, we have to make sure that the product works, and we are an open platform. We work with partners in markets around the world on great integrations, like open graph integrations, and that makes the product very local, and that creates local content. Since we don't produce the content, it's the users and our partners that add the local content and the local flavor.
To go to gender for a second, is there anything you'd like to correct about the gender discussion in Silicon Valley, the division between men and women?
I don't know about correcting. I mean, there's several layers of the discussion. It's more, it's popular to talk about women engineers, and that is a big topic everywhere. And the fact is, more young women need, and not just young women, more women need to, there's more opportunities for women to become computer scientists and engineers. And the big tech companies are working hard to make scholarships and intern programs and summer programs and all that sort of thing for women considering the field. So that's a piece of it, right? Because historically there have been so many more men engineers. So that's a piece. Then other topics flare up now and again about an old boys network or a young boys network. I mean, these are true in a lot of arenas of life. And there are ways to overcome it and to work alongside it and to work from the inside. in all of these areas. As I think one of the panelists said this morning, it didn't used to be that half of the medical students were women, and now they are. So the same is true for anything to do with technology.
Well, I don't think corrections. I think tech is definitely a male-dominated world, but it's also, with a lot of what I talked about earlier, it's a place where if you have great ideas, if you are bold, if you take risks, there are lots of opportunities, and the scary part is that you have to do it yourself. You have to go for it, and there's not as much of a support structure maybe, or not as many role models for women in that environment. But we have Sheryl Sandberg at Facebook, we have great female engineers at Facebook too, and I think there are, everywhere I go to events and everywhere within the company, there are great women leaders, entrepreneurs that you can meet, but they're definitely still outnumbered by men.
One thing I would add is, in addition to formal university programs that are making an effort to encourage more women students, there are also interesting things that I couldn't have imagined at this age. Before, in high school, junior high, middle school, Twitter just made an investment and supports one called Girls Who Code. And there are other sort of summer camp kind of arrangements for, sort of encouraging girls who are nerds. Right, girls who, like the maker movement is quite big with this too. So there's efforts on a lot of fronts, not just for women engineers, but for, girls who want to learn math, girls who are interested in science. And I think all of these things have a place and are going to show fruits in another generation.
Do you think the most important roles in technology will continue to be hardware and software based? Do you think communication roles will become more popular and important? Or is math and engineering, is that what we should be emphasizing in terms of training next generation?
I don't know that you can pick one or another. I mean, to me, of course, communication is important, all the time, whether you're, documenting a software product or, posting on a blog or crafting an apology for an outage, right, which can happen with a tech company. I mean, communication to me is at the root. Now to an engineer, probably coding is at the root. So I don't think it's a matter of choosing one or the other so much as saying it's important for everybody to follow their passions. And whatever those are, and whoever is in the field now, just ignore that if you're passionate about it, move forward.
You described it to me as core to Facebook that everyone should be working on what is core to them. And I wanted to ask you, what do you consider to be a core skill of someone in charge of internationalization of a huge American company?
Yeah, so we do definitely focus on strengths and to have people work on something that aligns with their strengths and then put a diverse team together. For me, I've always been curious about different countries. I've traveled all over ever since I can remember. And so I think that's important. Being curious about new markets, understanding what's similar, what's different, understanding those patterns, working with, understanding partners, finding local great employees. So for me, that variety and doing a lot of different things and figuring out what's most important, I think, is also something that I've always enjoyed.
I think we must be out of time at this point, but thank you, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you.